All right, we are here, guys, with some awesome people. Welcome to the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast. I'm John McGlynn. You can find me on the Twitter machine at John McGlynn75. I'd like to thank my good friend and neighbor Nick Script at PTW Fantasy for letting me use his StreamYard YouTube to produce these hopefully heated divisional debates. Today, I plan on having some fun, and this is part 7 of an 8-part series where fan passion and fantasy football goodness go head to head. Today, we're in some real sharp and talented content creators in the football industry to talk about their favorite teams. The first guy I got here is John Hogue at Superflex Dude, my guy, friend of each. We're friend of each other's shows. The Broncos are such a well balanced and powerful team. Do you ever wish that you were in a different division, like the NFC East or something? Today we're here to listen
No.
and enjoy as you proclaim you're not so friendly, rabid divisional foes. The reason the Broncos will gallop their way to this division title.
Yeah, man. No, we've had Pat Mahomes beating up on us for so many years. I'm looking forward to a little bit of revenge.
It should. I can't imagine like this is the West. Like I said before in the pre-show, I've been waiting for the show for 7 weeks now because this is one of my favorite things going on here. This favorite divisions, but Zach, the Chargers got a new stadium, new quarterback, and the future is so bright in LA as this Chargers team is loaded with talent. We're only doing the offensive side of the ball on these shows, so there's no way I'm not going down the IDP rabbit hole with any of this stuff ever in fantasy football, but this Chargers team is electric. So tell me about yourself, what you're doing in the fantasy football industry, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm on going for two, kind of new to the whole community, just trying to meet everyone, get every chance I can get to talk about football, fantasy football, all that. And, today I'm ready to talk about the Chargers and why they're winning the division.
Zach was in. He was our sticker. I don't know if sticker bitch is supposed to be the set anymore, but that's kind of the position he took for our live in person draft. I have every year it's somebody different. Pat Fitzmaurice was our sticker guy for this last Chicago draft for the inaugural ones anyway. And then I've had Mike Tagliere, Waz, a lot of good people at my live drafts. I run 8 home leagues called the Mighty McGlynn Home Leagues. We'll talk about it later, but it's a big honor. So I thank you, Zach. Thanks for he was in Zach's in my Scott Fishbowl situation too. So it's awesome having him here.
We've had the most peaceful 11-12 I've ever experienced in a draft. I figured there'd be more animosity, but we're both content with our teams.
Yes, I am. I am. David Mendelson at DMendy2, another friend of the show. The Chiefs had a triangle offense better than what Phil Jackson coached in the 90s with the Chicago Bulls. They decided to just open the cage and let the cheetah walk out. How does this team, who completely shit the bed in the second half of the Bengals playoff game, reinvent itself? Well, we'll go by position and explain why. But tell me about yourself, what you do, what's coming down the pipeline, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. And you can find me on Twitter at DMendio2. I big Chiefs fan, obviously why I'm here tonight. But as far as content that I produce, all my visual content usually is over at Triple Play Fantasy. You can find my work other places, Fantasy Pros, the 33rd Team, and Fantrax. But I do football and baseball, and I love both of them equally. And I just love everything about them.
Did you tell Michael Carter you were coming on tonight?
I hadn't, but I should text him. I should.
It's funny because one of Mendy's friends is a guy who I grew up with and played baseball since I was like 5 or 6 years old. And it's just funny how small the world is, really.
I feel like the whole Chicago community is awesome. Like you and Mike and Nick and Steven Johnson. And like, there's so many people I'm like that all live in Chicago, draft together. And I'm like, I guess I was born in the wrong area because it's pretty cool how many of you guys live in that area.
It is a great fantasy football community. I wish the Fishbowl draft was awesome. It was cool seeing everybody meeting so many new people. So it is a great community. I love it here. I'm not going to lie. It's when they have events going on, like for ESPN, at like Bourbon Street or some other places. It really, there's tons of people that show up. So the OG fantasy football, one of the bright minds in this industry, representing the black hole and the super mega annoying Raiders fan base called Raider Nation. I swear, if there was ever a team I was happy the Tuck rule got called on, it was the Raiders. As a Dolphins fan, I hate Tom Brady. I hate the Patriots. Getting nation screamed in my face by every drunk Raiders fan on the planet, it's just run its course already for me. I'm so happy to see the pretty good Raiders team trapped in this nightmare division. Now I got all these. Now that I got all that off my chest, I'll give you the opportunity to try and turn me into a Raiders fan tonight. Okay. So tell me about yourself, where they could find you at, all that kind of stuff.
So my name is Theo Greminger. I'm at the OG Fantasy on Twitter. You can find me on the Goat District podcast, and you can find my writing at Player Profiler. I'm the high stakes lead writer there. So I write like a number of articles throughout the year, like the waiver wire, weekly column. And in the off season, I've been putting out some values articles, some draft reviews. I have a number of articles coming up, yeah, that's where you can find me. And then, John, I'm not as passionate as these three guys. I like my Raiders, but I'm my fantasy team is my number one team at all. So you can pile it on a little bit more on me if these guys get a little tired of it tonight. But I'm super excited to talk with you. Me and you potted together a number of times. It's awesome getting a chance to see you again and all that.
Yes, absolutely. I was looking forward to this show so much. Every one of you guys is awesome. So this should be a really, really good show as far as that goes. News from around the NFL since my last show. Just stuff from the interdivision stuff. Jalen Guyton have a fantastic offseason. I just threw in Terry McLaurin with extension. Jerry Jeudy says he's fully healthy. I got to throw in some Jameis. Every show I have to throw in anytime I get anything with Jameis Winston. He's throwing without a knee brace now. And then we got the latest news today. Baker Mayfield has found a new team. He's with the Carolina Panthers. Him and DJ Moore should be my new favorite combo in the league going forward. So that's about all the new stuff that's going on in any kind of big news since my last show. I got a quick story. I was lucky enough to run the Chicago in-person Scott Fishbowl drafts, and it was a blast. Zach, who was on my show today representing the Chargers, was there and is in my division also. Paphos Morris was there to kick it off, along with a ton of guys that are sprinkled across what I call the Mighty McGlynn home leagues. Connor Allen, Nick and Anthony Script, Colin Taylor, Sean Foss, Steven Johnson, Brett Zimmerman, Rob Wozniak, Kyle August. It was almost like being at one of my own home league drafts, but it was a blast. I was in the middle of the ocean for 6 days prior to the actual draft with no internet. So I'd like to thank Nathan Powell for running the division races to determine division positions while I was unavailable. I literally got home at 4 a.m. in the morning and had a dead battery on my car on the way home, and I got home from the airport. Anyway, it was a great experience. I'm just shooting from the hip. Throughout this draft right now because I kind of got lost. But Zach is right behind me, 11th spot, and I took the number 12 for the third round reversal bonus. So it was hosting the Fishbowl was something special for me because I love the only leagues I'm in besides the Fishbowl are all home leagues. It's anywhere between I don't know the number of people that are. Some people cross over different leagues, but I love being a commissioner. I love running these leagues. I love having rookie drafts and draft lotteries for every league, and just having fun all around. Fantasy football is my favorite hobby. I don't hunt, I don't fish, I don't do golf, I don't do that stuff. Home leagues is really where it's at. So it meant a really lot for me to have the one of the first Scott Fishbowl leagues be in Chicago and me be able to be there and run it myself. It was fantastic. So that's my story for this week. And we came here for these guys to fight, and that's what we're going to do. And we'll start with the quarterback position. So talk to me about the team starter, and if it helps the cause, you can name any backups, newly drafted players. That's kind of what we're doing here. We'll start with the quarterback position. So, Theo, tell me about the Raiders quarterback situation and why. I mean, Derek Carr is a pretty damn good quarterback. He's very underrated in my eyes. So you tell me in a fantasy football perspective why Derek Carr is going to be the quarterback that's going to lead them to a division title this year.
So I think that I would probably put the Raiders maybe about third in the preseason. I think right now you can't really call them the favorites. I think they're going to definitely challenge for it. Derek Carr is like super interesting for fantasy though this year. He threw for a career high in yards last year. He finished his quarterback 12. He gets a pretty interesting coaching upgrade here with Josh McDaniels and Nick Lombardi, the offensive coordinator. Those guys have like a nice history. And then obviously they added weapons for him this year. So to me, he's very interesting. Right now he's like quarterback 14 on Underdog. But I think he's got upside that he could finish a pretty good deal higher than that. I think he's kind of capped by his rushing ability where I don't see him, cracking into like the, top 6. But I think there's a reasonable case to be made that Derek Carr could finish inside the top 10 quarterbacks right now. I think that what we're going to see is like a balanced offense. They have a number of, if you take a look at preseason totals in Vegas, the Raiders are projected to be in a ton of shootouts. It's basically to the strength of this conference, and also their the defense has some question marks. So I think Derek Carr is a nice upside QB2, and I think he's a great way if you're looking to potentially draft 2 quarterbacks in your league. You want to draft a guy like Justin Fields or Trey Lance. You could afford to have Derek Carr as well, where there might be some question marks of a boom bust upside guy. I think Carr offers you a really nice floor from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, I think he's very underrated, especially with his newest upgrade, which we'll get to later. But real good quarterback. John Hogue, you finally get to talk about your Broncos here. So we got
nice.
We got this new guy in town. Everybody
Josh
seems
Johnson.
to love this guy. Tell me about Russell Wilson.
Josh Johnson is an upgrade, by the way, over what we've had the last few years.
Yeah.
So I'm excited just about that. But yeah, the actual QB1 here is man, it's so exciting in Denver to finally have some competent quarterback play again. He also has a really hot wife.
He does. It's been to see that them have such good teams and just missing one piece being a quarterback, and then finally getting your quarterback. It's got to be you. I mean, you guys have to be jumping for joy in Denver. Yeah,
definitely. I have a little bit of a different take on it than a lot of Broncos fans. We had this trade getting Russell Wilson happened 2 days after John Elway's contract expired. And, we had spent how many years with John Elway drafting big, stupid quarterbacks with big arms, mobility, but rocks for brains. And finally get him out of the way, and you get the little dude who throws the YOLO balls and, can run to extend plays. And it was just infuriating to see, like you said, they put together this championship roster, but waste it on awful quarterback play. So yeah, it's just such a breath of fresh air to have a not only a competent quarterback, but a potential franchise quarterback.
This is the first guy that's under 6'9" in the last 12, 15 years with you guys, right?
Yeah.
John always said you got to be 6'8" to play quarterback or something like that, or some stupid philosophy that he had before.
Yep. You got to be big. You got to have a big arm, and you got to be stupid. He wanted guys who play the game like he played, the way he played it. And it's just there's a reason that's only worked for one guy ever.
Yeah. Yep. Zach, you got a pretty good quarterback going on in LA. Tell me about why your guy, Justin Herbert, is going to win this division for the Chargers.
Well, he's not only the most talented individually at the position in the division, but he's also got the best pass protection. And that's something where, while I do love Denver picking up Russell Wilson, and by the way, John, I need to apologize in advance for anything I say about the Broncos. I'm formerly from Colorado, so I'm surrounded by way too many Bronco fans.
Nice.
And I hear all the bias. So if there's any animosity your way, it's not actually at you, it's at all of them.
Oh, I get it. This is an awful fan base. I will admit that.
The amount of years I had to hear about the Brocket launcher or someone else being the truth, the 6'9" QB like John was alluding to. Yeah. But you finally got one. Anyway, Justin Herbert, he's got the best pass protection and he's the most talented. I mean, there's not too much I need to go into it. He's just the best. I mean, I love him in fantasy. I love him in real life. I mean, obviously, I have Patrick Holmes in the division, but I love knowing my guys secure. They had a good draft in regards to bringing more guys in on the offensive line. They also brought in Corey Linsley the year prior. They have a good defense. It's a tough division, but you're going to need a good O-line with so many stout D-lines in this division, and that's where I feel most confident about Justin Herbert.
Dave, how confident are you that Patrick Mahomes is going to be lead the Chiefs to a division championship here?
I mean, first, I'll be honest that this is the first year in the Patrick Mahomes era that I'm actually not sure we're going to win the division. And every single year you'd ask me up to this point, I'd say it's a question if we're going to go to the Super Bowl or not. The division is to me is wrapped up. And that's just a testament to how well all these other teams have kind of reconstructed themselves over the last couple of years here. I think the one thing that's very interesting is how much people are sleeping on Patrick Mahomes this year, which it sounds crazy to say, but I've heard some people say, he's the QB6. I saw someone say they have him at like QB12. He's, I think, going to shock people this year because you lose Tyreek Hill, and I know we'll talk about all that stuff later, but he has the best group of receivers he's ever had in his career. This is a guy that's played with Demarcus Robinson, Byron Pringle, Mecole Hardman, the back end Sammy Watkins. Like, he's never had a good group to go along with Kelsey and Hill. So now he's got a good collection of guys that we'll get into. And I think Patrick Mahomes kind of senses that people are sleeping a little bit on the Chiefs right now. And I think, and he's already throwing in Texas with a bunch of these other receivers. And I think he's going to shock some people this year. I think with how much better he does than people think without Tyreek Hill.
And he's also fallen to like an affordable part of the draft, not just like where he's ranked as a quarterback. You would have like that upper tier where you have to reach to get Mahomes in a regular, 12-team draft. And now he's like in a tier with guys. It's pretty interesting to see. I think that it's like the Tyreek discount. But it's one of the most talented quarterbacks we've ever seen at like a discount in the drafts. It's pretty interesting. I've seen him go as quarterback 6. I've seen him go as quarterback 4 in drafts I've been in. So it's I still like underdog. He's behind Herbert right now.
Fantasy pros too.
It's very close, but it's kind of funny to look at. It's almost like at the end of the day, it's like seeing Mahomes this close to like Jalen Hurts in terms of ADP is a little bit funny. And we'll see if it works out that way.
And I can understand from a standpoint of having him behind Justin Herbert and Josh Allen, but any of the rest of the guys I have a hard time passing up on Patrick for. And, I also look at the Chiefs offense, and this isn't a team that has these stout running backs. Edwards-Helaire and Rojo aren't going to suddenly be these top-tier running backs that are going to make them more of a rush-first offense. It's still running through Patrick Mahomes, whether Tyreek's there or not, and we know the talent's there, regardless of who the weapons are. And he's still got Kelsey.
And Andy Reid's still calling the plays.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's got a rushing upside too, where you might have to see that a little bit more this year, which for a fantasy perspective is like super exciting. So, I mean, it's like in the preseason, you want to kind of be fading Mahomes, like from a neutral perspective, but then you actually see where he's getting drafted. And I think that the market's moved too much. I think he's almost like a value right now.
Yeah, and just to put a cap on it too, like even though he was 4th in fantasy points per game each of the last 2 years, and he was QB1 the year he exploded, he still had tied with the most weekly top 12 finishes with Justin Herbert last year. And somebody that, again, just as you look at his passing grades, you look at just across the board, all the numbers are still there. I just think putting anything below QB3, I think, is a mistake this year. Again, like we said, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, I can understand you putting him behind them. I just don't think you can discount him much more than that, even with the Tyreek Hill potential loss in that sense.
He's definitely going to have to reinvent himself. That's something we're going to see a different Patrick Mahomes this year, but how much for the better, how much for the worse, that's something we'll find out. I think he's got across the board, like you said, a lot more, not tier 1, top of tier 1 players in Tyreek Hill, but there's a lot of talent around him that he's never had that much talent around him before. So we'll see what happens here. But Mendy, we just talked a minute ago about the running backs in KC. I just traded this year for CEH myself. Tell me that's not a mistake. Tell me where Ronald Jones fits in, Jarrett McKinnon, Isaiah Pacheco, Jerrion Early, like where all these guys, how are they going to fit in behind CEH? Is CEH really, was it just a, because of surgery before last year, like him not really getting the offense? What's going to happen with the whole running back, the whole running back stable in Kansas City this year?
Isaiah Pacheco was an interesting kind of maybe last pick of a best ball draft. I don't even know if he'll make the team now, just with the fact they still have Derek Gore there. And when they brought back Jerick McKinnon, that kind of complicates things. But at the end of the day, for me, there's two players you can argue that are going to be fantasy relevant for this team, barring injury, and it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Ronald Jones. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a person I went out on a limb last year, and I said he was going to be a top 10 running back. I had him ranked as RB10 last year. And I made a thread before the season started. I talked about how bad the offensive line was, whether you looked at PFF grade, whether you looked at negative runs, just where he's getting stuffed behind the line of scrimmage. The fact that he was basically him, and then you combine all the other running backs on the team were not converting at the goal line. I said there's just so much that is supposed to bounce the other way that we're going to see CEH be a capable RB2 this year, or I was saying last year, potentially RB back end RB1. It just never happened, whether it was, him fumbling a couple times, him not being involved in the passing game. He's also not an explosive runner. He's one of the worst explosive run rates among running backs in the NFL. So he's not somebody that's breaking off 20-plus yard runs. He's just getting, 4, 3, 5. That's the kind of running back he is. And I'm out, John. I'm sorry to say it. I'm out on him. And it's not just because he burned me last year with that call. He's just not an NFL starter. Just from watching him play, the eye test, he doesn't read cuts very well. Like when there's openings in the offensive line, he's not reading them correctly. I think he's one of those guys that's a good complementary back. I think that's his place in the NFL, a change of pace, a receiving back, a team that actually will throw him the ball consistently. But I'm intrigued with Ronald Jones. I'm very intrigued with Ronald Jones. He was a top 26 running back before last year, each of the last 2 years. Before that, he's a career near 5 yards per carry. I think the big thing is his fumbling problem. And I think if you can work on that with him, he's got a new head coach in Andy Reid. He's away from Bruce Arians, who's always kind of in the doghouse there. We've seen how good of a runner he is. And I think he's going to be the best running back on this team. A Kansas City Chiefs offense that we know is top 5 in the NFL. And I don't see, now that Darrell Williams is gone, there being a major goal line threat at the running back position that could take him off the field at the goal line situation. So I have Ronald Jones as one of the biggest surprises at the running back position this year. Somebody that you could get as, like, if you go heavy wide receiver to start your draft, if you have Rojo as like your RB2 or your RB3, that you could be in pretty good shape.
Even if he gets the goal line, even if he just has the goal line role in Kansas City, he's intriguing where he's being drafted. I like that call a lot. He's a guy I've drafted a lot in best ball. They never give the ball to Clyde Edwards-Helaire inside the 5, and it's like they go get Rojo. So yeah, I love that call. I think Rojo could really pay off this year. And it's not like he's going at a point where you have to use any kind of draft capital to get him. Get him in like the 10th, 11th round. You can always recover on that one.
I mean, even Jerick McKinnon last year was kind of picking up the slack for CEH. He had some pretty good, towards the end of the season, he had some pretty good games. And I understand the whole Rojo on the goal line thing, and, he doesn't need to catch any passes. If he's just a goal line back, that's fine. If that's what his job is, to be a goal line back, well, like you said, he's got to hold on to the ball. The fumbleitis is not going to last very long in the NFL. It's that's kind of why he's in the doghouse where he was before. So, speaking of guys who can't get very long yardage, I think Josh Jacobs' longest run of his career was 26 or 28 yards or something like that. So, tell me about Josh Jacobs, Zamir White, Britton Brown, Kenyon Drake, all that stuff. Tell me about the Raiders' backfield stable here to make me feel good about the Raiders. And I just traded for Josh Jacobs too, so I might be going down, getting beat up in the corner of the ring over here by all these bad moves I made in my fantasy team.
John, I don't like the Jacobs trade in Dynasty. I think that they didn't extend him contract wise. They had an opportunity to do so. When Josh McDaniels was hired, he talked about how he viewed Josh Jacobs as a 3-down running back and a guy that they were going to heavily use. But nothing that they've done this offseason really showed that. The contract, and also the fact that they went out and drafted Zamir White in the 4th round. He's a really intriguing player. I think that he basically, with how much money they're spending on their wide receivers, I think that there's a chance that Zamir White could be the starting running back next year if they do move on from Josh Jacobs in Vegas. He's a very intriguing prospect. He had 11 touchdowns last year for Georgia. He had over 2,000 yards rushing there. He played with a number of pros in a crowded backfield. He was like the number one running back in the nation as a prospect going to Georgia. So you always like those guys who, have the high pedigree. And the beat writers have been, very, very, they're very, very full of praise in their describing Zamir White. The running backs coaches as well, saying he's got a good work ethic. They're saying all like the things that you want to hear when they're talking about young players. They also signed Brandon Bolden, who's got the connection with McDaniels from New England. He's going to be a special teams guy who knows the offense, but he's another guy that saw some work for the Patriots. And then Kenyon Drake, I think kind of the hope was for Josh Jacobs managers in Dynasty was that Kenyon Drake would just get cut. But instead of cutting Kenyon Drake, they went out and restructured his contract. So it looks like he's going to be a lock to make the roster. And that's a guy that they think can do some things. Kenyon Drake was a free agent signing last year, and people were kind of intrigued by him. He made Josh Jacobs a little more affordable in redraft. And then, he had obviously a disaster of a season with 12 games played and not a whole lot of production when he did play. But he's got that two-way ability. With a new coaching staff that restructured him, I think that he's kind of intriguing because he can catch the ball out of the backfield. And catches was really what kept Jacobs up last year. He had his lowest rushing yardage total of his entire career, but he did have a career-high 54 catches. So it's going to be really hard for me, in my opinion, to see Josh Jacobs kind of paying off for where he's going. He's very much in the dead zone. I mean, you're seeing the guy go in the 5th round. I've seen him touch the 6th round before, but I think the 5th round for most leagues is where Josh Jacobs will live. And to me, I just there's so many other ways you could go with that 5th round pick that have a much higher upside. I think that like the bullish argument for Josh Jacobs will be that the Raiders offense makes a big step forward. Jacobs sees all this goal line work. Jacobs has a ton of touchdowns, but you're really going to be betting on touchdowns. And I think that there's a chance that Zamir White could end up stealing some of that goal line action a little bit later in the year. Jacobs actually only had like 40%, a little bit north of 40% of the short down distance work last year. So even like last year, the coaching staff didn't like run him into the ground when they had him. So I don't know. To me, he seems like a guy who's got a lot of tread on the tires. He, rushing wise, had some issues last year, and now we see a very crowded backfield. So I think everything that they're doing to me screams that it's going to be somewhat of a committee. Jacobs will see the most touches out of it, but not enough to help your fantasy team. And I would go a different direction where he's being drafted.
Couple things about Jacobs that I just think this is the last year of his contract, so they're going to use him and abuse him while they, groom Zamir White for the role. But Zamir White, what did he already have? 3 knee surgeries? Is it 2 or 3?
Yeah,
he kind of got beat up a little bit in college, so.
But that's why they got him in the 4th round. I think that Zamir White, if he would have stayed healthy, would have been potentially a day 1 pick, that kind of guy. So with Zamir White, like your window for him might not be so big in Dynasty, but
right.
If he stays healthy, he's interesting. I mean, you went and got Jacobs, and I know you play in a lot of deep Dynasty formats. I think going and getting Zamir White at cost might not be the worst way to play that Jacobs move this year from a Dynasty perspective.
I traded Zamir White and Mitch Trubisky to get Josh Jacobs. That's kind of my I already had Mahomes, Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence, and somebody else on my team, so I didn't really need a quarterback, which I know John Hogan's probably puking right now because I said I traded a quarterback away for a running back, but it's one of those things where I just need to do. I have my receivers are stacked, my tight ends are stacked. I had pretty much a really good situation, but I needed running backs, and CEH and Josh Jacobs just kind of fit the bill because they're young. I think that they've been misused, some injuries, the coaching staff not using them correctly, and they're still Josh Jacobs just turned 24, and CEH is still 23, I think, right? So I think they still have a lot. They're just if they go somewhere else, which they're probably going to, maybe they'll be used by the next team correctly. That's just where I'm at. I got a long time to worry about these guys, not panning out or, but they have the tools. I feel like they have the tools, and I don't think 100% that CEH is going to, blossom into this awesome running back, but I think he's going to be a great PPR back. And in a PPR league, having a running back that catches 50 plus passes a season is really all you need. You want touchdowns and stuff too, but I like receiving backs in my PPR leagues.
Yeah.
So I like
Well,
guys who score touchdowns and stuff too, I guess. But
I like Rojo more than CEH. I've been big on the Rojo Hill this offseason, but in regards to both of them for a PPR league, I'm not against it, simply based off the aspect of these are going to be new looks for both offenses. The Raiders have a new head coach, and they brought in this big fancy new toy in Devontae Adams, and I know we'll get into that in a bit, but I assume that could change the look for how defenses are game planning and potentially open the door for more opportunities for Jacobs to maybe get a 30-yarder someday in his career. But
yeah, I hope he gets
the
a touchdown.
opportunity is there. Yeah,
For
hopefully.
you, John, in championship week.
Thanks, guys. You guys are awesome. You're supposed to be fighting with each other, but you're making me feel good. This is great. I love it. I should have
trying
guessed on
to
you more often.
trying to make you blush a little.
I'm blushing. I'm sunburned, but I'm blushing underneath it. So it's that's good. But Zach, tell me about a running back that pretty much burned me last year in fantasy football. I played against Austin Eckler a couple games, and it just happened to be his career games when I played against him. He had a great year last year. Do you see him redoing all of the feats that he had last year with his 29,000 touchdowns and 100 million yards?
It's tough to bet on touchdowns being consistent. Usually I like to depend more on the yards, the receptions, that kind of volume rather than touchdowns because those can be hit or miss each season. But with someone like Eckler, it's hard not to see the opportunity there. They love him in the red zone. They love him in all parts of the field. He's all reliable. It's hard not to trust him. The only concerns are as his age gets a little older, that maybe an injury creeps up. But that's where you look at someone like Spiller. Hopefully he can be what, Roundtree or any of those other previous guys they took at the third or fourth round pick that people had hopes for. Hopefully he can be that. And I look at Spiller also as someone that he's more of a fullback in my eyes. Like he's just a complete change of pace and change of style from what Eckler is. I don't have big expectations for him, but I think there's a complete different approach when he's on the field. But Eckler, I mean, it's hard to bet against him at this point. He's been so consistent for so many years, and week in, week out, he's usually producing a good chunk of fantasy points for any winning team. I mean, I don't. Go ahead, John.
If you're one of those guys who drafts, one of those crazy fantasy football guys who drafts their dynasty rosters before the NFL draft, like in the end of February, beginning of March, at that point in time, Isaiah Spiller was still the RB1 in most fantasy rankings, and it's changed a lot since then. Thank goodness, But Spiller was at one time thought of as the RB1 in this class.
And he fell down big time with the combine, with the workouts, and then it just kept going come NFL draft time. Yeah, I mean, I did a few of those drafts, and we did our Devy/rookie draft in, I want to say, March. And Spiller, yeah, he went 102, and they regretted that fairly quickly after. I mean, like, there's a reason why he was getting that hype that throughout his college tape. There are plenty of reasons to see potential hope for him turning into more at the NFL level, but it's also easy to buy into the concerns because I mean those piled up quick from March onward. But
I don't mind having fantasy football drafts right after the combine, right after the draft, we're seeing landing spots, stuff like that. Right after that is fine, but people who draft in March, I just feel like unless you're in like a Devy league and you've seen these guys play since they were coming out of high school, which I just got my first Devy league this year, so a campus Canton league. I'm pretty happy about that. So it'll help my recruiting or talent or knowing information from these guys coming in and out. But I just feel like I just feel like these guys are doing such a disservice to yourself by drafting that early. I don't understand the whole rush to hurry up and get somebody on your team. I don't want to wait until week before the NFL season to draft my team either. I don't mind, but I mean, I like to. Everybody has their own thing, their own way of doing stuff. But my favorite thing to do is wait till like a couple weeks after the NFL draft and then have the draft then. I think that's a great time to draft.
I think it's more just excitement. You want more football in your life. The Super Bowl just ended and you need something because now you're in that weird period waiting for the combine, waiting for the NFL draft. And you're like, well, what do I do with these teams? All right, let's just start another league. I think that's been the mindset for most of my leagues that, we draft in February, but it definitely makes it tricky because, yeah, guys like Spiller were way higher and kind of changes game plans for rookie drafts and the way you're drafting your team with the
Yeah.
expectations of those rookies.
I will say one thing, just going back to Eckler really fast, is I do expect some type of regression from him this year. How much, I think, is up in the air. But here's like a couple things that I've taken is one, if you look at total amount of touches per game from running backs last year, Austin Eckler was fourth. He had the fourth most touches in the NFL at just around 45 per game. No, I'm sorry, not fourth. He was eighth at just over 45 per game. Actually averaged more touches per game than Jonathan Taylor, if you could believe that, which is actually pretty wild.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Then you look at red zone touches, running back rushes inside the red zone. Jonathan Taylor had 89 rushes inside the red zone. Austin Eckler had 49. But even though there's obviously a huge gap between first and second, Austin Eckler had the second most red zone rushes among running backs last year. Now, I talked to Austin Eckler a few weeks ago, and he basically said, he was like, I need to like take care of my body, and I can't take, he's like, Austin Eckler is like 5'8", 200 pounds or something like that. He said, I need to preserve my body. I can't take that many touches consistently. He's like, it hurts. Like at my size, every hit hurts. And so he's excited about Isaiah Spiller coming in and taking some touches away from him. And Eckler was somebody that we saw thrive because he scored 20 touchdowns. And someone like Isaiah Spiller might take some of those touchdowns away. He's a little bit of a bigger back than him. I also like Isaiah Spiller a lot personally as a running back prospect. But I think it's to be said, last year, Austin Eckler didn't really have a handcuff. It was kind of just a committee of guys that stepped in various times. Spiller is going to be the legit handcuff to him, and I think is going to vulture some touchdowns and some work that we didn't see taken from Austin Eckler this past season. So I think right now he's the consensus like RB2, RB3. I have to look at where he's ranked, but I think he's still like a top 5 or 6 running back, but I think we have to scale back what we can expect from him. I mean, keep in mind, him and LT have had the only 20 touchdown seasons in Chargers running back history. So
Yeah.
we have to expect some regression this year.
Go ahead, Theo.
And touchdown wise, it was also like, I think his previous high combined touchdowns was like 11, and he just completely just exploded. But I agree with you. Spiller's interesting, and he landed perfectly. So any like kind of like question marks we might have had post combine, I think kind of go out the window because like David said, he's the clear cuff there. You have to put him in the mix with the upside handcuffs, and he's got potential for even more. They could potentially use him as a change of pace back, and he's also got the receiving ability. I mean, his stats at A&M, the guy caught almost 80 balls in the SEC, and he broke out at a very, very young age. So I think he's super intriguing. And if Eckler went down, I think he would see an absolute ton of work. He'd be like a top 15 weekly play if Eckler missed any weeks, just based on how good the offense is. So I'm kind of into Spiller as well this year. I think he's definitely super interesting.
I'm not necessarily as high on Spiller this year, but I do see the benefit for the handcuff, and I like him being with Eckler because Eckler is someone that, he was a UDFA and came from a small school, and Spiller's going to have a chip on his shoulder now. He plummeted his stock. There was high hopes like we already alluded to, and I think that chip on his shoulder and being with someone like Eckler who had to work for all the opportunity he got will help him. And there will be a lot he can gain from working with Austin and trying to take some of that pressure off of him. And yeah, I actually have Eckler as my RB7 right now for this year. And it's not anything to slight him, but it's more so along what David was saying where, there's going to be some regression in regards to workload, and it's hard to really bet on the consistency in touchdowns year after year. You just can't realistically expect that, and especially at that volume. I'm going to expect that to drop a little bit, and I still feel good about Eckler, but I don't love his price right now. I don't want to take him at the RB2, the RB3. There's other guys I expect to climb into there, and that's where I get a little concerned and why I don't have too many shares of Eckler this year.
I don't blame him. I mean, I'm 5'11", 360, and I would hate to get hurt to hit that much too. So I don't, I don't blame him. And I've heard him say publicly that he wants to get rid of some of his workload because he wants to make a career out of it. The guy generally has, as you talked to him, Dave, a couple weeks ago. Um, the guy generally has fun playing football. He loves doing fantasy stuff. He loves being on podcasts and shows, and he's thoroughly enjoying his football experience here. So he's going to make it want to last as long as possible, whether it be a part-time back or whatever. But getting the ball 800 times a year is not going to extend your fantasy football life, especially for somebody that size. So, but let's John. I'm gonna wake you up over there in the corner, okay?
No, I was actually trying to find some stats because I know we're about to talk Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, and I'm trying to find something to differentiate those two in 2021. It's not really there.
Come on, Javonte Williams is somebody I just know that this year he's going to be that bridge. I think this is that bridge year where Gordon's going to be a pain in the butt for this year again, and then Javonte is just going to take over that offense next year. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. And the problem is, I know that a lot of people are pretty frustrated with the re-signing of Melvin Gordon, and that's why I was trying to find something tangible that I can point to back up my theory here that he's not going to be the threat that he was in 2021. That's my honest belief. I think that you already have him pretty much out of the way. Obviously still on roster, but the fact that it took them until draft weekend to commit to him. He was making the rounds and just couldn't find another job. He ends up back in Denver at a huge discount so he can play with Russ, with that, University of Wisconsin connection. There's just a lot of fluff to this re-signing, not a whole lot of substance. And part of where I say that is, one differentiator that I found, obviously the touchdowns ended up being slanted towards Gordon 2-1, but the big runs, and I don't even know how ESPN defines these, but big runs, it was 6-3 in favor of Javonte Williams. And so what we saw several times was Javonte Williams breaks a long run, breaking tackles all the way down the field, finally taken down inside the 5, and then who comes in to clean it up? Like that was kind of the story of the Broncos backfield in 2021. And to me, the guy who gets the biggest bump on this entire offense from bringing in Russell Wilson is Javonte Williams, because first of all, you get more extended drives, these carries, these touches for running backs. It's not going to be at the premium that it was in 2021. You're going to get more opportunities. You're going to get more trips into the red zone. And even better than that, this is one of the best defenses in the league that's been built up here, but they just were on the field constantly in 2021. Drew Lock could not pick up a first down to save his life. And, so you end up with a defense, that's tired and unable to minimize the scoring, and you kind of negate the running game. You turn it into a one-dimensional pass-heavy offense. You're not going to have that anymore. You're going to have a defense that's well rested, and you're going to create some more positive game scripts for the running game by minimizing scoring. So there's so many reasons to be to feel good about this running game just in general. But we know just by the eye test, you can see who's the better running back. And I trust Nathaniel Hackett to have caught on to that. I think that you're going to see a lot more Javonte Williams. I don't think it's going to be nearly as balanced. And the other thing I'll say is, I've liked Mike Boone for a long time. I felt like he could be an NFL starter elsewhere. And he's kind of third on the depth chart. And then the Broncos seem to love Demaria Crockett. So there's kind of a lot of competition there for touches. There's a lot of guys that they want to get the ball into their hands. And I don't know how, what's the path for Melvin Gordon to rise to the top of that?
A Javonte Williams injury is it. That's it.
Yep.
Yeah, like I'm with you. I think that's the right take. I think it's Javonte's time. They let Melvin Gordon go on the market, and he couldn't get any money from anybody, and they got him for $2.5 million. So it's,
Yep.
I think Javonte is going at a very reasonable price tag for where you can draft him versus what you'll get, and I think he'll have a lot of like big boom games when that Broncos offense is humming. And I think he's got such an ability as a receiver, and he's a natural runner. And I mean, I'm very bullish on him. Gordon like kind of keeps him down a little bit, but it also might keep him fresh and healthy to have that vet. So I mean, gotta love Javonte.
I'm big on Javonte as well, and I mean, I already alluded to the Broncos O-line earlier, but that's part of the reason why I love Javonte so much. If Russ has to scramble out of the pocket and dump something off, I'm anticipating a lot of times going Javonte's way, and that's a guy I look to thrive there. So I want all those PPR points. Javonte will get them.
Yes. I love PPR points. So that's why we're talking about wide receivers next. And Theo, we're going to start with you with newly acquired Devontae Adams leading the core here. Henry Renfrow, Demarcus Robinson, Matt Collins, a bunch of other guys in this team. They brought in Justin Hall in the draft. So tell me about the wide receivers for the Las Vegas Raiders.
So it's a really pretty easy team to draft. We like both of these wide receivers, especially where they're going. And it's a very, very consolidated target tree. We're going to talk about tight ends next, but like you said, they have a lot of kind of journeymen kind of filling out the roster. They paid an absolute fortune to Devontae Adams, and they also gave Hunter Renfrow a huge contract. Adams comes over. I think it's going to be difficult for Adams to get his 31%. He had a 31.6% target share last year in Green Bay. I think that he's going to probably be more, in that 28-ish, which is still elite, but not quite as much volume as he saw. He's still going to be, the focal point of the offense, in my opinion. I think that they did not bring him in not to have him shine. You have the locker room narrative with Derek Carr. Derek Carr and him talked about him coming to the Raiders previously. It's been a couple of years now where that's kind of like been in motion. And I think there's no way he's coming over there not to get the absolute star treatment. I think that his points per game last year, he was 21 points per game. I think that is doable. I think that, you can confidently draft him among the top 15 players, how your draft goes. I've seen him go mostly at the end of the first round. Occasionally you get him right at the beginning of the second. I think it's fine price for him because I think his downside, even if he doesn't hit kind of the way that we think he will, I think that his floor is so high as an elite talented wide receiver that you're not going to see him just, drop off. The guy's been consistently terrific for years, even in the time that Brett Hundley was quarterback in the Packers in that time that there was an extended injury. He was still a wide receiver one with him. That's going way back, but he's just a fantastic player. Few players are better in the red zone at the wide receiver position. He's just unstoppable around the goal line. He's got big playability. I mean, I could talk about Devontae Adams all day, but Renfrow is actually super interesting to me. He's going as wide receiver 39 on Underdog. He's going 80th overall in Underdog, and it's kind of a guy that the fantasy community is betting on having a huge regression, but his metrics are not overwhelming. He was 21.2% target share guy, and he finishes as wide receiver 10. He was about 15 points per game in a PPR league, and he only had 124 targets. So we think of him as some, dump off guy that got a inordinate amount of targets last year, but he was just very, very efficient. He's an elite route runner. They did pay him the contract. And you look at some of the guys that played in the slot predominantly for McDaniels in his offense over the years, the Wes Welkers, the Julian Edelmans, even Jacoby Myers. Those guys are treated well in the offense. They run easy routes. They're a big part of getting first downs in that offense. And I think that having Adams there really helps Renfrow. I mean, he's going to live in the slot. And I think where he's going now, where you're getting him as a outside of a wide receiver 3 range. In some leagues, I've seen him be like an 8th round pick in like a regular, PPR league, 7th round pick, 9th round pick even. I think he could pay off big time. And I think it comes down to kind of the pecking order between him and Waller, who we'll touch on shortly. But I think that, like, again, it's such a consolidated target tree that I think you can draft all of the Raiders pass catchers with confidence. But Renfro's a really interesting one. And if Adams missed any time or Waller missed any time, I think you'd see Renfro's target share go up even higher. So I'm one of these people that I don't think he's going to fall off the face of the earth. I don't think he'll be wide receiver 10, but he's getting drafted as wide receiver 39. So it doesn't take a whole lot for him to pay off at his ADP.
No, I know Carr was teammates with Devontae Adams in college, and
Yeah,
they
at Fresno. Yep.
But the thing is, I just don't see Carr and Adams having the same continuity that Rodgers had with Adams, because literally I feel like you could have put a blindfold on those two guys and had them run routes, and Rodgers can take it 3 steps back and just throw it to a spot. Adams can catch it with a blindfold on, and they can complete these plays. They knew exactly where they were supposed to be on the field at all times. That was one of the best wide receiver quarterback combinations in the history of football, in my mind. That was fabulous. I know Carr's got past with him, experience with him from the past, but at the same time, he's not Aaron Rodgers. He's a good quarterback, but he's not Aaron Rodgers. So it's going to be tough to replicate those numbers. But Zach, what were you saying?
No, it's just piggybacking off of what John and Theo, what you both said, because I'm in both parties. I love Devontae. I mean, I'm a Packer fan deep down. I mean, that's where my bias stems from. But I've watched that duo for years, Rodgers and Adams, and there was nothing like it. I get the chemistry's there from Fresno State, but Derek Carr isn't Aaron Rodgers. And I love Derek Carr in fantasy this year, but he's not that pinpoint accuracy guy that Rodgers is either. And it's tough. I mean, I look at Devontae as a guy that his floor is so extremely high, like Theo was alluding to, where even if you take him and he doesn't necessarily live up to that wide receiver 2 where you might take him, he's not going to fall out of the top 20 like we've seen some guys. If a change of scenery takes place or something where there's this massive shift in where the targets are going, Devontae, regardless, is going to produce like a top-end wide receiver. But I love it more so for the guys around him, Waller, Renfro, even a little bit Jacobs, where teams respect Devontae, corners respect Devontae. They know how skilled he is with his route tree, just every aspect of his game. They know who he is, what he is, and they're going to have to game plan for that. And that's where I look at Renfro and Waller, especially, where they're getting that cornerback 2, that cornerback 3 on them. More opportunity for them to get a guy that's sleeping or that necessarily just can't keep up with how they play, and they can thrive there. So I'm looking at all the other weapons around them to kind of cherry pick from what Devontae makes the defenses have to do. But I think you can't go wrong with Devontae. It scares me because I have a hard time seeing him produce like the sole wide receiver like he was in Green Bay. But even if he's not that, he's going to be close to that. That's just who he is, and I'm always going to trust him.
Yeah, I mean, he won't get the 169 targets either.
Yeah.
But again, I think he can be very efficient in this offense. I think that this is a guy who's 29 years old. This is like his last few, dominant years. I don't think he would make a move over without some assurances of his role. So I think we might see a drop down to 150 targets, but that's still going to put him towards the upper elite wide receivers in the league. And again, it's a bet on the talent. It's a bet at you're getting him behind, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and obviously Cooper Kupp right now. So you're not having to draft him as a top 3 wide receiver for the first time in a while. And he's going, right. You can get in most PPR leagues, getting him right around the 1-2 turn gives you great balance. And again, like you said, his floor is high. So like if you draft him as wide receiver 4 and he finishes wide receiver 7 or 8, I think it's not going to kill your team. And I think that if you look at the wide receiver rankings as a whole in terms of ADP right now, when you get kind of a little further down, you have the guys that we're really hoping can break into the elite tier and production. But those guys have a little bit more question marks than maybe we have with Devontae this year. So I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see, how they use him. But I think we have to bet on the talent. We have to bet on a high target share and a high number of targets. And the fact that I think that Carr looks at this as kind of his, career opportunity. I think he's going to force feed the alpha, and he's going to dictate the entire offense.
Yeah, I could see him having over 100 receptions this year. Not easily, but being that good of a receiver with some continuity coming into the system, it's not going to take him a year to figure out his quarterback. He already knows who it is. So with that offense, with the system he's coming into, I could see him, being a bit behind, like you guys said before, but he couldn't land in a better spot as far as I'm concerned.
And a sleeper little bet too, Derek Carr for MVP. I mean, the odds are really good there relative to a lot of other guys around him. And if Devontae is that piece that takes him over the top to really reach his full potential as a quarterback, that's a great odds there. So I'd recommend looking at that as well.
Wow, that's a good bet. Let's jump to the Chiefs now. Dave Mendy. We got some Sky Moore, some Juju Smith-Schuster. We revamped this whole wide receiving core. Marquez Valdez-Scantling. We got Hardman still there. Justin Ross was kind of a after the draft kind of signing. Then you got a whole bunch of guys on his depth chart here, but bringing in Sky Moore and Juju, that's some pretty bold moves. MVS, I don't think. Yes, he's fast, he's big, and get downfield, but he is not shifty like the Cheetah was. So, tell me about this wide receiving core from Kansas City.
I'm really excited about this wide receiving core. Sky Moore is someone I really wanted the Chiefs to draft this year. I didn't think he was going to last outside the first round, but ended up getting taken in the late second. As long as he got to Kansas City, that was all I was hoping for. He's one of the best. I think, if I remember correctly, only one receiver in college had better hands in terms of just the drop percentage than Sky Moore. But I mean, this is a guy that's sure-handed. He's 5'10", 195 pounds, arguably the best slot receiver in this class. Somebody that consistently wins at the line of scrimmage. And I'm very excited just the shiftiness and what he's going to bring from the slot. He also broke an FBS high 26 tackles last year. So he is somebody that I think is going to do really well in this Chiefs offense. Now, the other guys is a little harder to judge. MVS, I think, is going to be, he is what he is. I think he's a very fast receiver. He's, to me, going to do what Tyreek Hill did in the sense of just taking the top off the defense, where, hey, we can't just bring everybody up because Tyreek Hill is gone. We still have MVS that can run downfield. So if they don't, put a safety back there and they have everybody playing up, the Chiefs will make them pay. And so MVS is going to have a very big role in that regard. And I do think that means there's going to be weeks where Marquez Valdez-Scantling gets, 8 catches for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like that is going to exist probably a couple times this year. Juju Smith-Schuster, I think, could very well be a 70 to 80 catch guy, get 1,000 yards and get 6 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns. Like I think he's going to be a very good receiver for this team. I think a better real life receiver in terms of what he brings to the offense than necessarily for fantasy. I think he's going to be somebody that you could trust as a flex play, depending on the week and depending on your team. I'm still most intrigued by Sky Moore of this team. I think he's the one that's signed for this team for the next 5 years. He's the one that's the big splash, a second-round draft pick to replace Tyreek Hill. I think, Mahomes has already been working with him in Texas. He's already, if you follow him on Instagram, he's, said sky's the limit for this kid and playing on his name with the pun. I like the chemistry there. And as we said earlier in the beginning of the show, Mahomes is by far the best collection of wide receivers he's played with at the NFL level as a collective group. So I think just funneling targets to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, while they're 2 all-pro players, the fact that he doesn't have to basically only trust 2 guys in this offense to make plays, I think is going to allow him to be able to have other guys get open when his first or second option isn't open. These guys can get open and he'll be able to be able to make plays outside the pocket. Guys can break free from coverage. So I think this collection is great. If you had asked me today, I rank them Sky Moore, Juju, MVS in terms of what I think their fantasy points at the end of the season will be. But you could tell maybe the complete other way around it. And of course, I wouldn't be shocked. But I think this group is very talented and they're all going to be fantasy relevant at different points this season.
I feel like they're all going to have like 55 to 70 receptions, for whatever, 700 yards. You're not going to die by the cheetah or Kelsey anymore. It's going to be death by 1,000 paper cuts on this team this year is what I feel is going to happen. It's going to be hard to cover anybody and then cover Patrick Mahomes. And that's why I think CEH is going to get a lot more because people are going not just play that deep cornerback to cover the cheetah or the deep safety to cover the cheetah. The running back, the running backs out of the backfield are going to be the dump offs, which I think are going to get a lot of receptions this year. And that's why I'm happy to have CEH on my team because the offense will be so much more open than it was before. And he won't be sitting Mahomes won't be in the backfield in the pocket for 5, 6, 7 seconds waiting for Cheetah to finally get open downfield or running circles and then finally find somewhere for Mahomes to hit him at. This is going to be a whole new offense, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I really am too.
David made a great point about the overall talent. I think that was a really sharp point. Like to go from like Byron Pringle and Demarcus Robinson to adding, you don't even need to rank them. If I told you could have Tyreek Hill, Byron Pringle, and Demarcus Robinson for a real life NFL team, or have Sky Moore, Juju Smith-Schuster, and MVS, you're probably going to go with box number 2. And then you add in the fact that Mecole Hardman is still there. So they still have like another player familiar with the offense that can go over the top of a defense. I think it's super exciting. I do think that one of them will like you're betting on Sky Moore. I think that one of them is going to be very fantasy useful. I think John, you might be a little too bearish on Juju. I think it's going to be hard for Juju to not get a number of receptions in this offense. It's just a matter of how quickly can Sky Moore potentially take over as a number 1 type target. But I think you could see a lot of games where Juju just eats and eats in terms of, highly targeted and very efficient with Mahomes, with all those guys who can get deep next to him.
Yeah.
I got like half on all my teams. I think I have Sky Moore on one and Juju on the other, like the other 4 or the other across the board. So it's going to suck when I'm like, yes. Oh, I need him to do in this league, and this league happened. Sky Moore got skunked this week, and vice versa. So, but it'll be good to see this offense.
I had a hot
Sky
take.
Moore's awesome.
I had a hot take that I forgot. I was DMing with somebody today, and I hadn't said it publicly yet. That I think this is just again a hot take prediction. I think Mecole Hardman is going to be healthy and active by midseason. Wow. That's how little I think the Chiefs are invested in him long term, and this is the last year that he's going to be with Kansas City. So I think by midseason, he's going to be healthy and active. And then, either he gets traded or something happens after that, or, someone gets hurt and then he can get some playing time. But I think he'll be phased out by that point.
He's definitely had his opportunities, and people have him ranked as a big sleeper this year. And if he hasn't done it the last couple of years, he's not going to do it now. And, Theo, when you said Byron Pringle, I made me laugh because we were talking about the Bears and how he's a wide receiver 2 on the Bears this year. And I wanted to throw some kind of joke out there, but it's not even funny. It's terrible what the Bears are doing. But that was a division show last week. That was it was funny. But the Byron Pringle, it makes you laugh on the inside joke kind of thing for a while. It's a shame what the Bears have to work with this year. But
it's good for Byron Pringle to be around an older veteran like Velus Jones, though. Chicago's getting the nice old wide receivers to teach him, help him become a pro.
I'm 46. I think I'm 47. I think he's right behind me. I think he's 26 years older or whatever.
Same high school class for sure.
Right. 1992, Brother Rice, baby. Here we go. All right. So we are going to jump to where are we at now? Zach, tell me about these awesome Chargers here. You got Keenan Allen. He's been slow and steady, wins the race. This guy's been as steady can get. Mike Williams. Mike Williams kind of tapered off towards the end of the year last year. Jalen Guyton, who getting rave reports about in camp. Josh Palmer, another guy I like. I don't want to talk about camp talk with Guyton, but I think Josh Palmer is the 3rd best receiver on this team. Then you got a bunch of other guys on here, but it's your job to talk about the Chargers. Tell me about why the Chargers, this receiving core from the Chargers is the best in this division.
I mean, I don't know if I can give the sales pitch on them being the best. I do like what the Broncos have with their third and fourth options around Sutton and Judy, but with the Chargers, Keenan Allen's always there. He's always producing. We were talking about Devontae and how consistent he is. Keenan is up there in regards to the respect in terms of consistent production. He lives up to the hype year after year, and that's a guy that I feel comfortable with having a high floor and a high ceiling as well. How often will he reach that ceiling? Tough to say, but that's where someone like Mike Williams, he scares me more. He's more of a best ball target for myself. I have
Exactly.
a hard time trusting that consistency because some weeks, it's 40 fantasy points and you're like, yes, this is exactly why I drafted him. Other weeks, there's 2 or 4 fantasy points and you're wondering why the hell he was in your starting lineup. And I love both the weapons. I love, Justin Herbert throwing them the ball. So obviously, to a point, you feel comfortable with both of them. But, Keenan Allen's the consistent one there. Otherwise, Mike Williams, it's hit or miss on the week. And someone for the third guy, I know Guyton is impressing in camp, but DeAndre Carter, a guy they brought in this offseason, he's had a fairly so-so career so far, but that's someone where I'm kind of intrigued to see what they can do with him, see if he can jump into that wide receiver 3 role and provide some sort of consistency. And especially for ADP talks and all that, DeAndre Carter isn't really on anyone's radar, and that's a guy that I'm looking towards those tail rounds, just trying to stash, and he can jump up into that wide receiver 3 and maybe consistently produce 8-12 points or have a few weeks where he's hitting that 20-point threshold. That's awesome for those rounds. But that's
I
the
feel,
guy on my radar.
I feel like they brought him in just to be a special teams ace. That's kind of where I'm at on him, though.
I see it, but I see that, especially the special teams, but I'm intrigued with the wide receiver 3. I have mixed feelings on Palmer and Guyton. I mean, I want to believe in Guyton as that third guy. I know that hype is there from camp, but I also, how often do we hear the coaches say anything negative about their guys this time of year? So that's
Yeah.
where I'm not trying to drink that Kool-Aid too much, but this is also coming from a guy that took MT in our Scott Fishbowl draft simply off of him cutting in an empty field. I let that persuade me, so maybe I'll let the coach talk persuade me with Guyton too.
There you go. All right. John, you got a little boost up from Zach from
Yeah.
from Zach over there about your receiver. So this should be an easy sell for you on the depth chart with having Sutton, who I love. I think Sutton's a way better receiver than Judy. Tim Patrick, Hamler, Seth Williams. I mean, you go down. They brought in some rookies that not much to talk about here, but the top
Mhm.
4 on this team is very, very talented.
Yes, very. But I do, and I mean, I think that Sutton is the guy that you want. I think that he's the guy who's going to be in the 25% target share range. I don't think anyone else is going to get there. And so I'm going to return the favor here to Zach a little bit and say, I think that there's some pretty significant value in for fantasy purposes. I mean, for NFL purposes, you want the depth, you want the weapons. It just helps your quarterback that much more. But and it's that much harder to scheme, and it's that much harder to defend. But for fantasy purposes, there's kind of some value in having Keenan Allen and just knowing that he's going to take a massive target share. Every single week. It's nice to have Devontae Adams. It's a little bit of a curse to have some depth when you're trying to navigate these depth charts, for fantasy purposes. Like I said, I think Sutton is the guy. I mean, he's just kind of he's the one guy on this roster that's built like the alpha chain mover type. He's the deep threat. He's the jump ball winner. They changed the name from 50-50 to 60-40 balls for him because he wins more often than not. And he's just kind of going to be the first guy that Russell Wilson's looking for every single time. There are going to be some games where Jerry Jeudy is kind of option B. There's going to be some games where it's whichever tight end rises to the top. There are going to be some times where KJ Hamler is going to get free for a couple long touchdowns, and there are going to be some games where Tim Patrick is kind of the matchup that they want to exploit. Having him on the outside opposite Sutton, getting the softer coverage, and it's going to be really tough to navigate for fantasy purposes beyond Sutton, I think. So, like I said, it's great for NFL purposes. It's great for Russell Wilson. It's going to make things easier. It's going to open things up for the running game. It's going to make life easier for the offensive line. But for fantasy purposes, this kind of isn't great.
No, it's not great, but it's like you said, for football fans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't. I don't think there's a better four receiver stack in the NFL than these guys.
Yeah.
And you got a pretty good tight end on the team too. But we'll get to that in a second. Anybody else got anything to say about the Broncos?
No, I mean, I think Sutton right now, like he's like wide receiver 15 or 16 on Underdog. He's moving up, and in some of these early drafts, he's going pretty high. I think he's the kind of the best bet alpha wise. You've already seen him do it with poor quarterback play earlier in his career pre-injury. So it's like now he gets elite quarterback play. And Russ will take some shots downfield to him. He could really finish highly. He's a guy who could really beat ADP. But I think Judy's kind of intriguing because I think that people are kind of betting on the fact that it's going to be, a lot of split targets and it's going to be like all these wide receivers getting work. I think at the end of the day, Judy could carve out a nice enough role and he's a good enough talent that I think he could be a very usable fantasy player. And I think he's falling to a point in drafts now because of the Sutton rise where you can take some shots on Judy. This is a guy that we were super excited to draft last year. He had the amazing, first half, gets injured, he's out. But we were really high on him last summer. He's a guy that really shot up draft boards, and I think now he does get the elite quarterback play in Russell Wilson as well. So he would be a guy that I think is one to keep an eye on, especially with all the Sutton love. I think there's a chance he could outscore Sutton. I don't think it's that huge of a leap just based on his pedigree and his profile and I think his talent.
Yeah, he's been Russell Wilson has been routinely supporting two wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 type guys, like somewhere in the top 15 type of range. He's been there pretty consistently the last several years. So there is an opportunity for Jerry Jeudy. It's also, the problem is it's also there for Tim Patrick. It could be either one of those guys, or kind of the most likely scenario is all of that work just kind of gets distributed and they make it up in the aggregate. But there's an opportunity, and I don't think that I'm with Theo. I don't think that the story's written fully on Jerry Jeudy yet.
Agreed, 100% with you guys.
So let's jump to tight end position here. We're going to start with Zach and the Chargers here. A very underrated Gerald Everett on this team. Donald Parham, we saw him go out the field last year with a pretty bad concussion. That was pretty scary to watch, actually. As someone who's seen a lot of football injuries, that was one of the more scary ones that I've ever seen. But talk about Gerald Everett, Donald Parham, Trey McKitty, and the Chargers tight end core.
Gerald Everett's someone I'm monitoring closely in most of my drafts right now. That's a guy that's way undervalued in regards to ADP. I don't have the exact stats up. David or Theo might. They seem to be quicker on the ADP for the specific references, but I know Gerald in most of my drafts has been falling a lot further than I necessarily anticipated, but I love him there. We keep waiting to see a tight end consistently produce for this team. And this is kind of the guy in the year where I'm anticipating more. Like I already alluded to, I don't really love those wide receiver 3s on the team. And I'm hoping that production that we would like to see at the wide receiver 3 position for them will come from the tight end, and specifically with Gerald Everett. I don't look at Donald Parham as someone who I necessarily anticipate stealing a lot of production from. He's a good blocker, but I still see Gerald out there most of the time, and I actually like Trey McKitty more than Donald Parham. I don't know. I don't really love this tight end room, though, that much. There's pretty much the rest of the division that I like their tight end core a lot more. But, Gerald Everett is definitely an undervalued guy if you're trying to wait on the tight end position in fantasy drafts where you want to try and get someone with upside and you're not necessarily spending a lot on that pick.
Tight end 21 on fantasy
Yeah,
numbers.
I love that there. I mean, tight end 21 there with, it's tough to, I could see him finishing tight end 10. I feel like that's not really asking a whole lot at the tight end position. If you're consistently at, 8 to 12 points in a PPR league at the tight end position, you're going to be towards that top because, after that first 5 or 6, the opportunity is there. So someone like that, that's a guy where, hey, hopefully I can get that filler spot since I was aggressive on all my other positions. And yeah, tight end 21, I love that.
And if you're going to wait on tight end, why not wait on tight end in what we think could be an elite offense with an elite quarterback where it doesn't take a whole lot to move the tight end position. And you could see Gerald Everett, have 8 touchdowns and all of a sudden he's a usable, tight end, low end tight end 1, high end tight end 2. So he's interesting. I think he's very affordable. It's kind of like some of those late athletic tight ends right now, like the Evan Engrams and the Noah Fants, Gerald Everett's. You could kind of paint a picture where they produce. But I like Gerald Everett. I think he's a nice tight end too if you draft 2 tight ends.
Absolutely, I love him there. I think we're all in this. Everybody in this room kind of agrees that he's very undervalued right now. But John, tell me about Albert O and my guy, sweet Greg Dulcich.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think kind of back to just like the wide receiver group, it's the bigger problem is just, it's a little congested, this entire group, because I do, we thought with Noah Fant being traded to Seattle that should mean the job opens up to Albert O, but I think that Greg Dulcich probably fits a little bit better as far as, size and speed and pass catching, kind of in the same mold as Robert Tonyan, a guy that Nathaniel Hackett worked with and liked quite a bit. So it's tough to say. I would say, at cost, Greg Dulcich is a great deep sleeper, very end of your draft type of pickup. But at the end of the day, I don't know that either of these guys is going to be a week in and week out starter. Just again, it's just, what's the path to a substantial target share for any of these guys when you already are trying to divvy it up between Sutton and Judy and Patrick and Hamler and the running game, so I don't think that there's really a whole lot of fantasy relevance here, but I think that if there's a guy who could potentially consolidate the position and become fantasy viable, I think it's probably Dulcich.
I agree with that. No, I mean, like you mentioned, John, there's just so many weapons there already where it's tough to really trust the production in a fantasy aspect to be there at tight end. But I'm out on Albert O for this year. I mean, I want to see it first before I invest, just because I see a lot of people buying into the hype, and he's going a little higher than I'd like to, relative to someone I haven't seen produce like that yet. And Dulcich, I mean, John, you know who got him in our league for the Scott Fish Bowl, right? I had to snag him late. I got our boy Dulcich. I mean, who knows? I think round 20? I'll take it there, but that's a guy that I think fits more, and I like him there. But yeah, it's tough to see too much volume going their way with so many weapons and so many mouths to feed already.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit easier for the next guy to take over to fight for tight ends. Theo, tell me, it must be tough sticking up for Darren Waller and Foster Moreau, but can you do it for us?
No, it's an easy sell. Darren Waller right now, like he's getting drafted as tight end 4. We've seen him have 2 top 5 finishes in his career. He was tight end 2. Last fully healthy season in 2020, he averaged like 17.5 points a game. He was right behind Travis Kelce, and he was getting drafted extremely highly last season. Last season we saw like a lot of his metrics go way down. We had the kind of it was a very odd injury situation where, we expected him to come back, and then he kind of lasted and lasted. It was a very disappointing season. He was still like 12 points a game last year, so he didn't fall off the face of the earth, but people would call him kind of a bust at ADP. But, he's still a tremendously talented guy, one of the better move tight ends in the NFL. And again, now that you've added Devontae Adams, the argument, like the pie is going to be larger type deal. So Darren Waller, I think, can still produce. I'm not overly drafting him at ADP, but I think he's appropriately priced. And like you brought up, Foster Moreau, he flashes every time he's on the field. Derek Carr had a nice connection with him. I think he's a very good backup tight end who I think would start for a number of NFL teams if he had the opportunity. So, if anything were to happen to Waller, Foster Moreau becomes like a top 15 weekly play. But, Darren Waller, for me, I think he's appropriately priced. He's not a guy that I'm overly targeting. I think that there is an outside chance that I alluded to earlier. I think Renfro might have already kind of passed him on the depth chart. I don't think that's completely out of the realm of possibilities in terms of like the target pecking order, but more likely than not, it's going to be Adams, Waller, and Renfro. And it's going to be, again, such a consolidated target tree that Waller should be able to eat, even with two other, guys that are getting a decent target share in the offense. And again, Waller's never had like a massive touchdown season. I think that is also in the realm of possibilities if he stays healthy in this offense.
I own the island of Foster Moreau in a bunch of my dynasty leagues. I love him. Until something happens to Waller, he's not going to be anything, obviously. But this is a very good offense across the board, and I'm looking forward to actually seeing the Raiders. Like I said before, this is just to be in this division when the Raiders finally got to have a good team. It's a terrible place to be, but it is what it is. Especially when you're going against Dave. Tell me how give me some Travis Kelce talk right now. Why is he better than Darren Waller at the position?
There's not many tight ends better than Travis Kelce these days, even in decline. He's a guy that been 5 of the last 6 years or 6 of the last 7 years has been the tight end 1 in fantasy. He's a slam dunk. He's now even more so going to be the number 1 pass catcher in this offense. If you thought it was a toss up between him and Tyreek Hill, that's obviously not the case anymore. He's somebody that is going to get you around 100 catches from the tight end position. He's going to be one of their best red zone targets. He doesn't need much statistical analysis to tell you how good Travis Kelce is. And I think you have another year or two of him being a dominant tight end, a top 3 tight end, I think, at worst case scenario. So, he's a luxury. I wish the Chiefs had a better backup tight end behind him that could step in if he got hurt, knock on wood. Because, Blake Bell, Noah Gray, and Jody Fortson are all nice players, but they're very much projects. There's not an established player that could come in and take that spot if something were to happen to him. So Kelce, as long as he's healthy, tight end 1 or tight end 2, I guess, at the very worst, if you have Andrews ahead of him. But ultimately, he's going to be perfect. He's a great second round pick for you in non-tight end premium leagues.
He could set his career high in targets this year too. I think that's like in the realm of possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And he absolutely lit it up in the playoffs last year. So like last year, I think he was playing hurt. And the offense had those stagnant weeks. So if you look at like his splits, the guy, was dominant to end the year where you wanted to see him. So when fully healthy, his playoff stats were ridiculous. And then he had the massive game against the Chargers late in the year in an important game for Kansas City as well. So he ended really well, and I think you could see him get north of 150 this year. He's had 150 targets once in his career, and I think there's a chance he could get it again this year.
I'm with you, 100%.
It's amazing how you have a team with such a great tight end with nobody behind there. What would be their move if Travis Kelce went down? You couldn't just stick Noah Gray out there and say, "Hey, this is going to be it." Like
got to be Noah Gray, though, right, David? Noah Gray's the only one with He's got to be their number 2 tight end, huh?
Right now, depth charts I've read, they have Blake Bell ahead of him.
I've
I
seen
think
that
they would do a combination of both of them. The problem is that, again, I think with their aspirations, it would depend on the length of injury. So like if Travis Kelce was going to be out, go on the pup list or something like that, yeah, like they're going to have to trade for one, like
sign Gronk. They could sign Gronk.
Oh my God, that would be awesome.
That'd be crazy.
All day. Sign him
I don't know
now.
like how many tight ends are on the market, but I think they would try to get one. I just wish they would have put better capital into that position. He's not going to be elite forever. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about again, Kelsey's a monster. Everybody knows that.
Yeah. Nate Williams says, "Hey, Mendy."
My guy. What's up, Nate?
So, have you guys ever been to any of these stadiums? You're like the one thing we talk about is like some of the food and fan base and history. I know some of you guys, some people don't go to stadiums or live too far away or are fans from different states. That's okay. But I have been to, where are we at? Kansas City once. It's obviously the barbecue in Kansas City is awesome. Me and my family have been on road trips all over. I've been to 43 states already with my family, with my wife and my 4 kids. We do just family trips or revolve around the cross tournaments, stuff like that. And I have not. We went around the entire state of Colorado one time, never went in it, so I never got to see that one. Las Vegas, obviously, that's a new stadium. I was supposed to go there when they played the Dolphins in the opening season, and COVID happened, so that kind of got SOL'd. And I remember James Catullus had tickets for the draft in Vegas, and God rest his soul, great guy, awesome dude, and he was so excited to go to Las Vegas when the stadium was built and go see the first draft, and that got shit. I mean, obviously he died because natural causes and stuff, but man, I feel sorry that he never got to live that up. Being that go to the draft and see his team, and obviously LA is a new stadium too. But I don't know have you guys ever been to any of these places?
I've been to the Bronco one. I mean, they change their name all the time now. I know what's the new stadium name.
I don't know anymore.
I know there was.
Not Mile
I
High
know.
anymore.
Oh, no, that's the
something
second part. It used to be Sports Authority, and then
I think it's Empower Field at
oh,
Mile High
that's
Stadium.
right. There was the #1 dispensary in Colorado when I was living out. They were trying to buy the naming rights, but the NFL wasn't allowing it. And I would have loved that. It would have fit the Colorado profile so much.
Yeah.
But no, that stadium is great. I mean, I have bad memories there. I think it was the year the Broncos won the Super Bowl. I saw the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. Sunday Night Football. Both teams undefeated, and Aaron Rodgers had like 82 passing yards and 0 touchdowns, 2 picks. It was not a good night to be in Packer gear, but it was a great stadium. I mean, a little older now, tough to get parking, but it was a good time. I mean, the Bronco faithful is always strong there, regardless of the weather.
Yeah, I don't know what the food would be like in LA compared to like Chicago, the Bears Stadium, or like some of the local stadiums or Kansas City. I would hate to see the menu in LA, but I don't know. It's the Vegas,
too many vegetables for you, McGlynn.
Way too many vegetables.
The Bronco Stadium lacks in good food too. The only specialty item at any Colorado sporting venue is the
Rocky Mountain oysters.
The Rocky Mountain oysters at the Rockies. Yeah, you can get some Bulls balls deep fried.
You can get those at the Bronco games too.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
I thought that was only at the Rockies. Yeah, that's
yeah, they've got them there too.
Have you ate them?
No. Yeah,
yes.
I'm not brave enough when it comes to food.
I did not know what they were. Actually, not as bad as I would have thought. I mean, I think it's more so the thought of what it is. So when you don't know what it is.
Go ahead, John.
I worked in a restaurant as a prep cook, and we had those. So I've never tried them, but I've cooked them. And you deep fry them, but so usually when you drop something into a deep fryer, like when it's done because it kind of floats to the top. These don't do that though. Like you have different visual clues, and it's basically like when they look way too greasy to eat, that's when they're ready. And it just that, like just the process of cooking them and knowing when they're done is disgusting enough.
Everybody around here has what's called lengua tacos, which is cow tongue. And they say, oh, you got to eat these cow tongue tacos. And I just imagine myself getting licked by a cow when I'm eating this taco. And I'm like, I just can't do it, you know? It's something.
Tasting you back.
But everybody says that it's so awesome. And if like people had cow tongues and they cut it, they're like, once you get past the, you know, the feeling of taste buds rubbing around your mouth, it actually tastes pretty good. I'm like, I can't do that. I'm a texture guy. I'm more of a quantity than quality kind of thing, you know, but texture is humongous in my like kind of food stuff. But
I feel like the Rocky Mountain oysters, they really aren't anything special though either. I think it's more so what they are and just eating another part of the cow or the bowl. It's like, and it's just funny too. I don't know. It wasn't this like, oh my gosh, this is a food I've been missing out. Like this delicacy. I need more Bulls balls in my life. I didn't exit it like that. It was just like, oh, that's what it is. Better than I thought.
How many bites does it take to eat one of these Bulls
I mean,
balls?
I put like 4 in my mouth at once just to see how many I could fit in, but no, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, it looked like a deep fried meatball. I mean, I didn't know what it was, so just yeah.
Oh, no thanks. Well, you guys, thanks so much for making Commissioner Evaluation Podcast another week, another special week, another awesome week. Thank you very much. On the way out, you want to? We'll start with Zach. You want to introduce yourself or say the way out? What you got coming down the pipeline? Where you been? All the stuff coming up.
On Twitter at the Big Pulowski. Otherwise, I've been making a lot of content for Scott Fishbowl on Going for Two, and otherwise through threads on Twitter. I'm fairly new to the community and to Scott Fishbowl itself. This is my first time in, so just trying to make sure I'm prepared and hopefully draft a winning team. John, I'm glad you didn't snipe me as much as I expected, but thank you for having me tonight. It was nice to meet all you guys, and I'm glad we could talk some football.
Zach, it's nice to know you as a friend, as in person, a couple times already, and to be on the podcast now. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Theo, my guy, let me tell me about yourself, all the stuff you got going on, your awesomeness.
So you can find me on Twitter at the OG Fantasy. You can find my written work on Player Profiler. I have a number of articles that have come out already this summer and a couple more in the woodworks. Again, I'm writing a lot of high stakes fantasy football articles, but also some strategy pieces that can help you in any format. I had a couple of dynasty pieces this past spring as well. You can find me on the Goat District podcast, where we're usually recording twice a week, sometimes more in the summertime. We brought on some awesome guests. Definitely give us a look. And then this Friday night, I'll be on Grind Time. It's the FFWC's show hosted by Billy Muzio. It's a really good new podcast. And Billy and I will be drafting against one another in the new Player Profiler Championship. It's a tournament on the FFWC. And we'll be drafting against one of another and a few other sharp drafters. So that'll be a lot of fun. And thanks again for having me on, John. It's always a blast talking to you.
No, tell Dan and JD I miss them, man. Those guys are some awesome guys. I look at that every week. I see the list of guests, and it's like, wow. Yeah, fantastic job, you guys. Awesome job. You guys are awesome over there. So
appreciate that.
Mendy, tell me about yourself. What's going on? All the good stuff around you.
Some stuff's going on. I mean, you can find every Thursday evening, I record Mendy's Moves for the 33rd team. That usually comes out every Monday or Tuesday morning on their YouTube channel. You can find monthly, like 2 articles from me for football for Fantasy Pros, and then weekly baseball articles for Fantasy Pros, also weekly baseball articles for Fantrax, and then everything else, Triple Play Fantasy, you can see with the hat. We do a bunch of stuff over there, baseball, basketball, football. Tomorrow we're doing a bonus football pod because Brennan Haywood is coming on the show, and we're going to talk some fantasy football with the former NBA player, Brennan Haywood. It should be a fun time. And if you like all the fantasy sports out there, we cover a lot of them, so check us out. Uh-oh, he's on mute.
You're on mute, John.
You guys have some awesome guests too. It's every time I look on there and I see NFL players, baseball players. It's like, holy cow! Where do you find all these guests from that come on your show from the actual professional leagues?
A lot of it has just been building connections over time. Like when I've had somebody on, either they put me in contact with somebody they're close with, or I stay close with their agent, and then their agent, if they get new clients or they just have recommendations, then they'll get that set up for me. So it's just been kind of a couple of years of just building contacts that have helped that mostly.
Nice. I love it. Superflex dude. Stay sexy
Yo,
and super flexy. Tell
that's
me all
right.
about yourself. The good show. Like I know you do tons of those every monthly
The mock
ADP
drafts.
rankings, mock drafts. That's got to drive me
Yep.
nuts. But
Yep.
tell me all about yourself. I think I cut you off earlier in the show on accident, but let everybody know where they can find you at, what you got going on, all the good stuff you do.
Yeah, there's most of it's going to be at dynastyleaguefootball.com, but yeah, there's those mock drafts, those ADP mock drafts. We do those every month, year round, even in season. So we're keeping up with Superflex startup player values, and to me, we've got the best ADP in the business, but we crowdsource those. So it's always great to have people jump in. So please do watch for the tweet at the beginning of each month. And then I rank both Superflex and Cornerstone, which it turns out is Superflex as well. And then it's yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, right sometimes, and then the Superflex Super Show, of course. That's my baby. Kind of just took a little bit of a hiatus so everybody could talk rookies and get that out of their system. And now that we're past that, I'm back at it and we're talking strategy. I just had Scott Connor, said Josh Bigby, got Katie Flower coming up, so we've got some really good strategists coming, and we're gonna keep it rolling.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I think I like when you do your solo shows a lot. It's just you just barking out for an hour or so, man. It's pretty nice.
I got me too, but I got called a snake oil salesman. Like I spent the entire off season just going solo and talking quarterback extreme, and I just got so many reviews saying it's starting to sound like an infomercial that I was like, all right, let's get some other perspectives on here. But I'm tired of people being wrong on my show all the time. It's time to talk about drafting the hell out of quarterbacks early and often.
There you go. I love it. I'm too much of a quarterback guy because of you, I think, but that's okay. I'd rather go down with a ship with too many quarterbacks on my roster than not have enough. So
That's
good.
right.
Well,
It's in
everybody,
your blood, man.
it's in my blood now. It wasn't
You're
before, but it is now. So
you're Super Show family. So
thanks, man. Thanks. I always
Yeah.
will be. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for making this a great show, everybody else. Thank you.